Did everybody mute themselves?
Waiting. All right. So in 2017, we started doing some regional trail planning across our region. And one of the members of that regional trail planning team was Ron Bench. And so that's where I got to meet Ron. And a few years after that, he approached us with some grant opportunities for our communities where we could help them to improve walkability. And we were like, yeah, we'll help you identify communities. Let's do this. And so we started working together on walkability projects in our cities and across the region. So Ron has a background in community development in Africa. And then he worked as a contractor for 10 years here in West Central Missouri. And then he found the Missourians for Responsible Transportation and starting doing that. Jackson, I don't have a bio on you, but Jackson is new to the MRT team and he really seems to hold things together and he's super organized, which I love. So much more so than myself or Ron, so that's good. And Jackson, you know, he told me that he's passionate about transit here because he's traveled all over the world and found even in Peru and China and other places in those rural areas that people have better access to transit than they do here in rural Missouri. And so it's been really interesting talking to Jackson and hearing his views on that and loving the fact that he is so passionate about rural transit and options for accessibility for everyone. So we've got to do some exciting things so far together. We've done walk audits in Clinton, Missouri. We've done walk audits in Wheatland, in Hickory County in general. Been working on a project over there to increase accessibility for people. And I've got to bring my bike on some of our walk audits, which is kind of fun because basically if I can't get there on my bike, then we know a wheelchair user can't get through there either. So we've been approaching we've talked to some city councils about walkability. One city council was like, well, we don't want to put in sidewalks because we could be sued. So anyway, that was an interesting jaw-dropping moment. But I know all of you that work across our region can imagine that happening. So anyway, go ahead. That's the best I can do for you, Ron.
All right. Thank you, Sheridan. That was a very nice introduction. And like Sheridan's like everyone else, they're thrilled with Jackson because I'm kind of all over the place and not very organized. And he brings order into my life, including like editing my slides for presentations. They look a lot better now that Jackson has helped me with this. Okay, can you all see my screen? Yep. Okay. All right, we're going to start here. Transportation, not just for cars. And again, my name is Ron Bench, project director, and we're just going to go over a little bit of overview. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Missourians for Responsible Transportation. I won't go into too much depth there. We'll talk about the growing need for non-car options. I'm going to share just a little personal example from my life on some things. We're going to talk about the region and what's happening in the region. And then we'll end with the partnering with communities and lawmakers and things that we're doing around the state. And if we have time, or if you have questions, we'll have a question and answer time at the end. So Missourians for Responsible Transportation is a partnership of 4 regional active transportation organizations. So that's Bike Walk KC in Kansas City, Ozark Greenways in Springfield, TrailNet in St. Louis, and PedNet in Columbia. And Jackson and I work out of the PedNet office in Columbia. Together, we are about 34 transportation professionals. That's how many staff we have to draw from. I say this all the time. I take great comfort in our staff because they're professionals. It means I don't really have to know anything. I just have to know them and connect them to the right people. So it's a very comforting. I'm very proud of our staff. They are very good at what they do. We're working right now in about 25 communities around the state. If you look at this map, you will see a large concentration in the Casinger region. And that's part of those grants that Sheridan mentioned. We went to, because we had a relationship there, knew there was an emphasis on trails and walkability. When the Department of Health and Senior Services approached us, we approached your region, and it's been a great partnership to have. But around the state, we're working with towns and communities from all around on different grants, different projects, and those kinds of things. That does not include the work that's being done like in the city of Columbia or in the city of Springfield. Those organizations we partner with are doing a lot of other work there as well. What we do together with these organizations, we advocate for streets, roads, and trails that work for all Missourians. A big part of that is listening. We want to listen and learn from communities. The other thing we do is try and help make connections. And a lot of times that is connections between towns and communities to where they learn or share ideas between them rather than us giving all the technical advice. We do give technical advice. When we do trainings in our cities, you find that most of our cities are groups of communities that are very similar to your small towns. And so a lot of the ideas do translate into smaller towns because like Columbia is a series of neighborhoods and a series of smaller communities that have come together. We also work on statewide issues. Might talk about a little bit later on, but we're working on the Rock Island Trail. We have formed a hands-free coalition as well of about 25 organizations working together to see a distracted driving law passed in Missouri for all drivers. We also lead the Missouri Livable Streets Advisory Committee. So we are trying to work what we call at a grassroots level and a grass tops level and everything in between, actually. All right, there you see Sheridan on her bicycle there. I love this picture. I think it's in every presentation I do. I apologize, Sheridan, but I think you look great there. The growing need of non-car options. We're going to cover 3 topics there with that. One is health, the other is safety, and finally, we're going to talk about the economics of non-car options. So the growing need of non-car options when it comes to health. Recommended daily activity is 30 minutes a day, 5 times a week, or 150 minutes a week. I talk to doctors all the time and talk about prescriptions. Every time I go in for a checkup, we have a very long conversation about health. And I talk about how exercise is a good thing, and the doctors keep telling me the same thing. We can't get people to exercise. We prescribe it, we cannot get them to go out and do it. I can relate to this. I have a set of weights in my basement, and I really wish I could lift weights 3 to 5 times a week, and I just don't do it. I like to be outside. So we know that where we live and the way we design our environment has huge health outcomes. Now, I have 2 houses. I have my family home in Morgan County near Versailles, and I have a home in Columbia. And just looking up from Robert Wood Johnson in life expectancy, between these 2 counties, you see that one is 74 years, one is 80 years, and it's called zip code health. And usually the further you have to drive and those kinds of things, it affects our health. I'm going to show you just a personal example of this, but when we design our environment to where it becomes a part of our everyday life, we have much better health outcomes than when we just try and get people to exercise. So because I do all this research and have all this information on all this stuff, I knew where to buy my house. So I bought my house here where the green dot is there, and my work is over here on the right. And so I bought a house that allowed me to commute to work every day, and it takes me about 15 minutes total. That equals to about 240 days a year. I figure 140 calories per day that I'm burning, you add all that up, that's 33,600 calories a year just on my daily commute. That is something when I live in my house in Versailles, I do not do. So you see, just by a small example, that's not including anything else I do, like going to the grocery store or any of those things. One small change in my lifestyle has a huge outcome to me. If you do the math on the calories, it's maybe about 9 pounds a year of exercise or something, just ride my bike a short commute. Now, the reason I ride my bike isn't because I don't, I have a car and all those kinds of things. It's actually faster and easier for me to get to work on my bike than it is a car. And my bike commute is all right turns. And, I do a loop and I come around, and it's just been built into my everyday life and has a huge health outcome for me. All right, so health. Physical health is a part of it, which we just talked about, but then there's also the mental health aspects as well. Left, right brain activity. When we walk and exercise and do things, we're stimulating both sides of our brain, and it's a very good thing. It's also shown, all the studies are saying that the rate of happiness decreases with the amount of commute time you have. So every 20 minutes you add driving in a car, people's happiness goes down. And then also there's the social health aspect of it. People who live in walkable or bikeable communities have a larger social network than people who just have to drive or live in a drivable community. And that's because when you're out walking, you meet people. My neighbor here in Columbia, when he saw me riding every day, he decided to go out and buy a bike as well. And his response was kind of interesting. He said, I had no idea this culture you live in as cyclists. He said, everywhere I go, I'm meeting people when I'm out there. So when I'm on my way to work, I meet other people. And he found that even at his work, he works at Veterans United in Columbia, there's a whole cycling group there. And they've started to do meetings together. Well, they'll ride to meetings and those kinds of things. So there's a huge social aspect to this as well. So I'm going to ask you this question. What future do you want for your kids? Now, Jackson gives me a hard time because I come across as an angry old white man who thinks everyone should put down their cell phones. But, I'm on mine all the time. Chances are if I'm on a Zoom call, I'm probably checking emails as well. So I'm not just complaining about kids and their phones, but I want to ask you, which one do you want? Do you want one that looks like that? Or do you want it looks like that? I'm going to show you again, this one versus this one. And this is something that we constantly are hearing about. I'm not anti-cell phone, but I am pro giving kids a place to play, giving kids freedom to go around. I don't know if anyone has read the study on happiness among teenagers. The country in the world with the highest happiness of teenagers is in the Netherlands. It also has the highest ridership of teenagers for bicycles in the world. And they say part of it is the freedom that it gives, the independence that kids have. And if you look at the Netherlands, their rate of drug use, teen pregnancy, depression, all those things is lower. And I'm simply making the case of we sometimes have designed our environment to where we don't feel safe to send our kids out in streets or to walk or those kinds of anything. The next thing I want to talk about is just safety. This is a running group that I was in Versailles. This group runs at 5 o'clock, and the feedback that we've gotten is that they see things in the community as they're running. So they have actually reported some suspicious activity and things because it's that thing of eyes on the street. When we have people who are walking and biking, communities become safer because you see more and you observe more. The other thing is, when more people are using it, the safer it becomes. And the studies are also showing that when we have a better walkable and bikeable community, traffic crashes go down as well. And part of that is because it lowers speed and there's better paint and there's better infrastructure. So everything becomes safer when we do that as well. Finally, the economy. So cars are expensive. And AAA just updated their new figures. That went from, I think 2 years ago, it was $9,200 a year to own a car. And their new figures are for each car you own on average is $9,666 per year just to own and operate that car. Now that's an average. That's taking expensive cars and it's taking less expensive cars. One of the things that we've been finding is even when people have less expensive cars, they're needing more repairs. And so sometimes those figures, even among lower income groups, are also very high. I took a county at random, which is St. Clair County, Missouri, and I looked up the average household income for St. Clair County, which is $38,870 a year. If you look at that, just to own one car per family for a two income household is a quarter of their income a year. So that means that the lower your income, the greater the cost is percentage-wise to a family, and it makes it very difficult. And so one of the things we look at with walking and biking and better infrastructure is we really do believe that this is an economic thing that helps people. When we talk to employers, one of the biggest struggles they have is like when people's cars are breaking down and they can't get to work, and it's those soft job skills and those kinds of things. And we're trying to make it better for people to be able to walk or go get groceries or those kinds of things. All right. And finally, with that, what is good for the community is good for the economy. It's something that we're going to say over and over, that we're trying to get communities and people to understand is when we take care of everyone, it improves the overall community, the overall economy. We often think with tourism to think outside, like how can we get those rich people to come spend their money here? And one of the most powerful things for tourism is when we improve our community to where people want to be there, to where people want to come and experience that as well. And it's something we often fail to look at when we're talking about the economy and tourism and all those kinds of things. So what is happening in the region? So anyone who knows me knows that the Kissinger region is one of my favorites because we've been working there and we've seen such great collaboration and things happening among towns and communities. I love this photo. That's Becky Groff and Marilyn Ellis from Stockton. And when I first met them, they said, we're going to go out and paint the streets ourselves if we have to. And I kind of said, yeah, right. You know, people make big claims, and they went out and painted the streets themselves. So the Kissinger region has been really cool. There's been great collaboration happening. These are the different communities that we've been personally working with in Kissinger on different grants. You see that there's quite a few there. Those are the Department of Health and Senior Services grants and the Anonymous Donor Grant. Also, there were some building communities for better health grants. I don't think I listed quite all of those as well. So complete streets policies has been a big part of what we've been doing in the Kissinger region. And so far, there have been 4 different communities that have passed policies in the Kissinger region. And Sheridan, I may have missed one or something, but these are the 4 that I am aware of. Warsaw had passed theirs back in 2016. But one of the towns I want to mention is Osceola. And we got to give Teresa a shout out there for her work that she did in Osceola in getting a complete streets policy passed there. For a small town, their policy is very strong, and it was a really great job that they did. It has led to other work being done. I don't know if the policy has led to other work, but other work has been done in Osceola as well. And it's been really neat to see the momentum and the things that are happening there. The other town I want to mention is Lincoln has also passed the complete streets policy there. We are doing, we've done quite a bit of work there and have some experiences in working with that town. One of the things that's happening there is that their school and their parks and their ball fields are on opposite sides of Highway 65, a 4-lane highway going through there. So they really needed to start with a policy, and it's been great to see what's going to happen there in those towns in Lincoln as well. Also, there has been some active transportation plans that have happened. Osceola, Stockton, Warsaw, Nevada all have a citywide active transportation plan. The other towns that were part of the DHSS grants are also working on other types of planning, but I don't know that they have completed a citywide plan yet. But planning and policy are some of the very first steps to seeing more grant funding in the future. Most people who are going to score these grants and those kind of things want to see what is happening when it comes to planning, making sure you're looking at long-term, and the quality of the plans and all of that really matters as well. And there in the picture here is, it shows connecting, the plan that was done by Kissinger Regional Planning Commission for the city of Osceola. And it's a great plan and document. It's available online. You can see that there as well. We've also been doing walk audits. These are the different towns that we have worked on personally with walk audits. The little picture you see on the right is the city of Clinton, and each dot represents a spot that was identified as a problem area in the walk audit. And we use an app. The city of Osceola used something very similar for their walk audit. They used it like a Google Map tool, but this allows us to identify problems when it comes to infrastructure. And it gives us a document that is also used for grants in the future. And it gives you a good local input because we want input from different people from communities. And it also gives outside input because when you're from a community, often you don't notice things. You don't see things because you're there every day and have gotten used to them as well. One of those is what we call a desire path. And if you look in these two photos, you'll see a worn path where people are walking without a sidewalk. And when you walk that much, it's being used every day. But usually when I go to a town and community, no one has noticed the desire path that is there. It's very rare if they have. And I want you to imagine if you're someone in a wheelchair trying to get across these places, or even if you're a family with kids and you are trying to push a stroller across that ground. And that's what I see the most is people in strollers trying to push their kids with their groceries to the grocery store. And the other thing I want you to notice here, and these are from two different towns in the Kissinger region. If you look in the background on both of them, you're going to see things. And this is one of the things we look for when we are looking for desire paths. We look for a Dollar General, we look for a convenience store. And most of the time, people are trying to get to their everyday needs and they don't have a good way to get there. And so that's something that ties back into the policy that we're trying to get people to understand that policy matters, that Dollar General, when they go to a store, they do not have that community's best interest in mind. They have their bottom line and their business interest in mind. So communities that have a policy that says you need to build a sidewalk is very important for the needs of that community. We're also looking for regional collaboration on those kind of policies because these businesses like to play one community off the other. So if one has a policy, they'll say, well, this other one doesn't, and they try and get you to cave on that as well. We're also doing some planning and education. We've set up this display. It was in Clinton last week, but it's a way to allow communities to give more input because that is one of the things we're really needing to do is hear more from communities. This is something we want to replicate that would be available for the Kissinger region to use to where something could be set up and people could give input over a week's time or a couple weeks. And we could allow people to come into the meetings in the evening. This is something that we've talked to Sheridan about. It's something that I know Kissinger wants to do. And I think everyone does, the way to get more community input as well. This is just another picture of that same example, but it gives a lot of information about complete streets and livable streets and those kinds of things. Collaboration. So our collaboration goes in a lot of different areas, but you'll see I have listed quite a few people here, different organizations, regional planning commissions. Our collaboration really starts at the community level with those community champions. And I mentioned Becky and Marilyn in Stockton. And, I could name off so many of those individual community champions from the Kissinger region who have just been rock stars. They're really the people who need the most praise for what gets done. The other ones I want to mention are the RPC staff. A lot of them are on the call. I've mentioned, Sheridan is on the call, and Teresa and Dylan and, the whole Kissinger group. I won't name them all. You all know them better than me. They have been really great to work with and really great partners. Like-minded organizations like New Growth and HealthTran are extremely important. Chambers of Commerce, MacVorse, We have different mayors, the mayor of, John King in Lincoln, and then county commissioners as well. We really have been impressed with the buy-in that we've been getting from different people in local government there. The other thing we do, though, is we try and build relationships with MoDOT, and this is also with Casinger region as well. They also build relationship with MoDOT. Where we try and bring in is we've built very strong relationships with Missouri State Parks, with the Department of Health and Senior Services. We are trying to build those relationships, and some of our relationships with MoDOT are like with the safety engineers, with our Hands-Free Coalition. And what we really want to offer to communities and people is that bridge between those relationships and to help introduce people to the right people when it comes to key players around different places. So that's just a little bit about the different collaboration that we're seeing. Actually seeing communities work together has been one of the coolest things, and that's what Casinger region has been really good at, is we're starting to see community collaboration where they're sharing ideas, sharing resources, those kinds of things, and that has been really great. It's been great for us too, because we've invited Teresa to give us input on our Complete Streets policy process, and we had other people give input. We've invited different people from the region to present about their towns and communities and the work that they've been doing. And so it's really been beneficial to see that collaboration go both ways in that. We are at the Capitol working on behalf of walking and biking around the state. And this is our leadership team at one of our days where we go, and I finally, I look a little more presentable than I do today. I usually shave before that event and try and look nice, but that's our team there. We try and go to the Capitol and talk to all the lawmakers that we can. We have been seeing new interest in biking and walking and trails and those kind of things this year at the Capitol with the new crop of legislators that came in. We organized a meeting this year around the Rock Island Trail. That's what this photograph is. But there were key people at this meeting too that are very interested in things like sidewalks and walking and biking. In the middle of that picture is Willard Haley. He is a marathon runner. He's one of the new legislators. Mike Stevens, who is one of the representatives, I think he lives in Bolivar. He is a huge bike riding trail person, very enthusiastic about this kind of thing. We've met with Jim Calberlow and Roger Reedy. We try and meet all of them and present the ideas and the needs that are happening in communities. The other thing we do is we work on Capitol Day events. So we're going to have an event around hands-free this year, distracted driving, where we invite people to come in and we arrange meetings for them and they get to talk to their legislators. We'll do that with the Rock Island, but we also try and organize meetings for our communities as well, to where they get to talk to, where we make an introduction to your lawmaker at the Capitol to talk about the needs of your community. If you're interested in any of those events, please reach out to us. We would love to have your voice and representation at the Capitol for you to talk about whatever you want with your lawmaker as well. So I'm always asked this question: why do I have no sidewalks in my community? I get asked that everywhere I go. Why, Ron, why are there no sidewalks? And I tell them I cannot go and fix the past, but what we can do is work towards the future together. We can start now to work towards building a better future for our kids. And I say now is the time, and it is time to take action to start doing this. The other common thread that I keep hearing is, I would love to ride my bike with my kids to the grocery store, but we don't feel safe. And I hear that over and over again. And I think it's time for us to really start doing that. And I think the Casinger Basin Regional Planning Commission area and the new growth area has really started to do that. And I think that you're going to be an example for the rest of the state. And I really am thrilled with what all has been going on in your region. So with that, I want to say thank you. I'm going to open up the questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I think I went 25 minutes, so that's just almost too much time. So do you have any questions?
Fire away, everybody. You can also put stuff in the chat and I'll try to monitor, but comments and questions. I have one for you. You know, this whole point, start here is about building our entrepreneurial ecosystem. And we know that's more than business planning and financing. It's also the environment in which our local businesses grow. And you made that point about the economy, but can you just kind of give us another example or a visual around how a small local business or downtown can really benefit from this kind of planning for the future?
Sure. Well, for one, when it comes to, we'll just start big, like when it comes to organization or businesses wanting to come in and start a new business in your area. Let's say that it's a bigger manufacturing or something. In the past, I think 10 years, the quality of life for those quality of life for the employees has become very important to CEOs and people who are starting businesses. So if it's a place where younger people or families want to be, they are more likely to invest there. So I think it's now gone from, I think 20 years ago, it was like 40% of CEOs said it was important, and now it's up to like 70% of CEOs say it's important. The other thing is that you know, when it comes to workforce development and all those kinds of things, or maintaining your workforce, we've been hearing that over and over, is we can't get young people to stay in our area. So I don't know if you all have that in your area. I'd love to hear from you if you have that experience. But we hear that sometimes people say in our rural areas, our talent is leaving. We can't get our quality youth to stay because they're going to cities where they have some of these things like public transportation, or they have trails, or they have sidewalks, those kinds of things. So those are a couple examples. You know, the other thing is that it's, you know, all the studies show that when you are on your feet or on your bike, you spend more money. And they, you know, a walking street gets by far more economic growth than when it is a car street. So when you're in your car, you pull in front of the business, you walk in, you get your stuff, you walk out to your car and you leave. When you're walking or biking, you have a tendency to go from store to store, and people spend more time there. So those are a few small examples. Probably others have better examples than what I do.
Thank you. That was a good overview of all those ways that it can help.
So a couple of years ago, I went on vacation to Bentonville, and we went down there, you know, to go biking and things. And like all fun parents, we took a detour to the Bentonville Industrial Park because that's what I like to check out on vacations. And one thing that you'll notice though about they have a really awesome industrial park, but right next to that industrial park, they have a really cool fitness center, and then they have a bike park, and then their trail system wraps around that. And, you know, that is not by accident. All of those amenities are there because people want to live close to their work, and they want to have those amenities. And it's so that they can attract and retain and keep the workforce that they have down there. And so, and even through the pandemic, if you look at the numbers for that whole Arkansas area, they are not losing people or workforce like other places in the country right now. And I really think that, you know, their intense work on their trail system and on making their cities comfortable and bikeable and walkable, I really think that has contributed heavily to that.
Sheridan, I love Bentonville for that reason too. And I've also noticed quite a few, we go there quite a bit, and Airbnbs now have bike racks to hang your bikes up in the garage, and they have these out, you know, you can wash them off. So I definitely appreciate that. I have a question for Ron and Jackson. So in these communities where you see these trails developing, do you oftentimes see opportunities for bike repairs or bike shops? Because I know when I think of a lot of our rural communities in this area, our bike shops are in Bentonville or Springfield or Kansas City. So is there any sort of connection that we can make in these rural communities to stir that type of entrepreneurial opportunity?
Yeah, I think for sure. I think Mac Voris would tell you in Warsaw, it's sometimes hard in a smaller community, but we are seeing the need for that. It is, you know, you have to travel long ways to get bike repairs. I think that what we probably overlook is the simplicity of it sometimes. You don't need a lot for it to be very effective. So even some communities have done bike vending machines where you can get tubes, CO2, water, that kind of thing. And just in kind of in the same vein, one of the things that we talk a lot about is placemaking, to where you just make people feel welcome on their bicycle or when they're walking with kids and families. It's as simple sometimes as putting milk crates outside of a convenience store. If you put 5 milk crates out there, cyclists will come and they'll sit on them and eat Casey's pizza. And that kind of thing is that simple. But if there is like a local bike shop, that kind of thing, it would be very, I think it would be very needed. And it kind of is like, which do you do first? Do you want cyclists first, or do you do this thing? The other thing I want to mention is in your areas, you have a lot of Mennonites probably that ride bicycles, maybe not the Amish, but the Mennonites. In Versailles, there's a Mennonite who has opened up a bike shop called World of Wheels, and it's very successful because he has a huge market there. So there's a lot of places that we don't think about. And it's a certain kind of Mennonite that rides bikes. Not all of them do. Does that answer your question,
The Mennonites in Versailles are very different than the Mennonites we have here. So it's a whole different sect. You talked a little bit about the economic, and it was mostly anecdotal. I guess show me some numbers.
Show you some numbers of
to support
which
the
kind?
idea that the bike trails or whatever does have an economic impact on the community.
Okay, I'm sorry. Say you cut out just a little bit there for me. You want some numbers on showing economic development among trails and biking and that kind of stuff.
Right. Everything you presented was just anecdotal and observational. Show me some numbers, though. Show me the numbers you go to a community to present to convince them that, investment in bike parks are a positive thing, or trails, or whatever it may be. Because I know Nevada in the last few years they have the new walking trail, and I don't see people using the walking trail. And it was actually a PedNet study that was presented, but in Nevada, I don't see people using the trail. I see people using the trail around Katie Allen Lake a lot, but the concrete trail, I don't see people using. So what do you do when you go into the communities? Do you just present anecdotal information, or do you actually present hard numbers that convince them to invest in these kinds of things? Because communities have to make a decision. What kind of infrastructure are they going to pay for, and how are they going to support that infrastructure? And you look at a small community like Osceola or Appleton City, whatever it may be, those are hard decisions. And so show me the numbers.
Yeah. So I think we can get you the numbers. Unfortunately, we don't have numbers for every specific type of thing, and it is something we need to study more. And you are right, my presentation was very vague and anecdotal in that. So yes, and I cannot promise you build a walking trail and you're going to see economic development from that specific trail. That is something I cannot do, and I'm probably not going to show you any number or any kind of study for your specific town and community. What I can say is that we know that there are people who need sidewalks and those kinds of things, and that there is an economic impact when you make a community to where they can actually access that as well. I am not going to tell you that you do this and all this tourism economic stuff is going to come your way. I'm not going to say that that's a magical thing that's going to happen. What I am going to say is that if you are able to make it better for your community, it will have an economic impact as well. And I'm going to say one more thing about that. Often our walking trails are in our wealthier areas. Often our sidewalks are in our wealthier parts of town, and we seldom look after the needs of the areas of town that need it the most. And we often never question new pavement or those kinds of things. We just say, well, yeah, of course, we drive cars and we need that, and we've neglected the other stuff. So yes, I think we can send you some numbers, Wayne, and I would be happy to do that. I do not have them with me right now.
Wayne, this is Ben Vickers, and I'm the economic developer for Vernon County. I would also add, people have come to our city council meetings and talked about how much they enjoy the, I assume you're talking about the new sidewalks from Woods to our downtown area. They come in and talk about how how much of a necessity it was for them to get that, because there are people who cannot drive and who only have like motorized chairs and that sort of thing. And I will add, Nevada is not a trails or bike friendly community. As much as we can claim to be and plan to be, I can count on one hand the number of bike racks in town. You know, if you ride your bike to work, you have to take it in the building with you and store it in the building because there's no place to really lock it up. And so it's sort of an incomplete Band-Aid on a gaping wound, if you will, in my opinion. But I absolutely agree with your statement that, you know, we need more than anecdotal information. We need to see hard numbers. But yeah, I just thought I would mention that people do value a lot of those trails that we've seen in the past few years.
And I'm not questioning the sidewalks at all. I'm more questioning about the bike trails and the walking trails and some of those kinds of things. I just think when you go into community, you need to be armed with some economic data. So, I mean, I would agree we need walking trails and bike trails, but I would like to see some numbers.
Yeah. And Wayne, I'll be honest. Often we don't have the data because it has not been collected for small towns and communities. We often get post results, but we seldom have something to compare. Studies are done in urban areas and they aren't done in our smaller towns and stuff. And it has been very hard to get that data that like what you're talking about and stuff. Jackson, you were getting ready to say something.
Yeah, some of the data we do have, like there's a great study that was done on the Katy Trail, which is, you know, like the classic standard for Missouri, but I think annually it costs, or it has about an $18.5 million economic impact. And people on average spend about $45 a day per user on the trail. I rode it last week from Kansas City back to Columbia, and I met people from San Diego, Buffalo, New York, and New Mexico. So people are attracted to that from elsewhere. It's just a matter of, you know, having that be for the residents within our Missouri towns that need it too.
Good conversation, and I think it goes back to planning because it's a systemic sort of thing, and you like placemaking. It's really about making it inviting and connect. Definitely seen a lot of good numbers around placemaking and things like that around the country. Sheridan, you were going to talk?
Yeah, and in regards to like economic impact for our small towns, for me, what made me really start to focus, kind of move our focus from the regional trails planning, because built trails take a long time and it's a lot of investment, you know, and expensive. And there's already some great and fabulous built trails coming along. I mean, the Katy Trail is built and Rock Island is developing and coming along. So how could we help our communities access some of the dollars coming off of that, knowing that we had that proximity? So my theory is if we could make our towns more bikeable and walkable that are near those areas, people who like to ride the Katy Trail, well, they like to bike. And so therefore they're more likely to come in town and find that more of an appealing place to stay, shop, and spend money, or eventually come live if those places are also bikeable and walkable, you know. So that was kind of where the economic benefit for the Casinger region, where I see that, you know, when you did that workshop a few years ago, Patty, when New Growth hosted the Katy Rock workshop, one of the problems we had mentioned was what Kelly mentioned. There weren't any bike shops. And so in Windsor, especially, there's like, we don't have a bike shop. And so what came out of that is the hardware store started carrying bike supplies. So now if you go there, to Windsor to that trailhead, you can go across the street and get basic bike supplies at the hardware store. And so, we've seen a lot of businesses start to grow and things just because of the trails too.
Right. There's a lot of things that came off, like the connections to the Rock Island and things. And that's, again, thinking as a community, how do we build on that and build on the demand? Do we have any more comments or questions? Well, this has been really, go ahead.
Oh, I was just typing it into chat, but Wayne, thank you for that input. I think I can get some numbers around business growth, especially in Appleton City, since their investment in connectivity and accessibility. They've seen an uptick in entrepreneurship and small business and people coming back into the community since seeing that reinvestment into the community. So I think I can get some basic numbers off of that information that I really didn't think about. I talked about it kind of like I am now without any numbers to support it, but I think I can get that in Appleton City fairly easily. So thank you for pointing that out. I think that's good input to have.
And may I make a request, send all that stuff to me as well, because we're going to make a little article on the website and post the recording to this session, and you all can share it with people. And definitely lots of good stuff to share beyond this meeting about this. Thank you again, Ron and Jackson, for being here. Definitely want to keep spreading the word and asking questions and exploring this for our region. We have a few more minutes left, and it would be great to go around the horn and see if anybody has some stuff that we all need to know about what's going on in your start here world. I'll just let anybody pipe in, and I can always fill in with a couple items at the end. Don't all go at once. All right,
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, so at K-Singer Basin, in the beginning of October, we're going to start marketing two things.